Thanks for attending this session. My name is Rahul Chidgopkar. I have 5 years of experience building content for marketplaces. In this session, I'll try to explain to you what I have learned and how you too can build great content strategy for your marketplace. This is how I have structured the session. First, we'll look at why content is important in marketplaces. Second, we'll look at the pillars of great content. Third, we'll deep dive into each of those pillars with some examples. And fourth, we'll recap this with a quick summary. With that context, let's move ahead. First, why is content even important for marketplaces? A quick intro to what marketplaces are. Online marketplaces connect buyers and sellers digitally and facilitate a transaction. Broadly, there are two types of marketplaces: a product marketplace where goods are traded, and second, our services marketplace. Marketplace business is huge. It brought in about $2.67 trillion in 2020, and it continues to be popular. So why is content important? Marketplaces work primarily on trust. Buyers and sellers don't meet, so they need to trust the intermediary. Content really contributes into building or breaking this trust. So a solid content strategy is really important. And why is content really challenging in marketplaces? Unlike other businesses like SaaS or retail, you have very limited control over the content in marketplaces. Primarily because you are not generating the content, it's sellers who are giving you the content which you are eventually publishing on your marketplace. So let's look at what the three big pillars of a great content strategy are. Simply, they are correctness, coverage, and consistency. Correctness means, is the information correct? Coverage means, do you have all the important and relevant information? And consistency is, are you showing the same information in all places? So let's look at each of these things in more detail. So we are going to deep dive into each of these pillars in this format. First, we'll look at a hypothetical scenario. Second, we'll look at what's the impact in that scenario. Third, we'll look at what the root cause might be. Fourth, I'll make some recommendations as to how you could investigate this issue. And fifth, I'll also recommend some action. The recommended action has been actually broken down into two parts. The first are the recommendations for a startup. And second are recommendations for a mature company that already has a lot of buyers and sellers. So with that context, let's move on. Now, let's imagine a hypothetical marketplace called Awesome Eats. It enables people to order food from local restaurants. I think this is a use case that most of us can connect with. Now let's look at correctness. Let me tell you a small story. Fatima is feeling bored to cook. So she decides to order some food from local halal restaurants. She searches for a halal restaurant on Awesome Eats and orders a beef curry and some bread. Then she calls up the restaurant just to confirm if the meat is indeed halal. And what does the restaurant tell her? That they changed their meat supplier and they no longer offer the halal option. They also confirm that the information shown on the website is wrong. Fatima is very angry. She immediately cancels the order and decides never to trust Awesome Eats again. Now, what was the user impact in this situation? Primarily, the user feels betrayed. In some cases, it may also hurt the well-being of the customers. Imagine the customer had some food allergies and you provided wrong information. This could have serious medical impact. In a best case scenario, customers would continue using you, but verify all the information themselves. But in most likely scenarios, customers will simply stop using you. This poses big reputational risks. If you develop a reputation of a product that cannot be trusted, then you'll have a very hard time attracting new customers and retaining the customers you have. Now, what might be causing this? So here are some broad points that I have learned over my years. First are inadequate checks during the seller onboarding. So if you do not check if the information that the seller has provided is correct or not, you're likely to publish it blindly and make mistakes. Second, the seller might give you wrong information purposely to commit fraud. Third, the seller might mistakenly provide you wrong information. So they have multiple Excel sheets floating around. They simply mailed you the wrong one. Fourth is the seller is unable to correct information. So in some cases, they actually find the information is wrong. There's no way to correct it. Fifth, the information that they originally gave you was correct, but over time, something changed and the information is no longer correct. These are the broad root causes which can lead to incorrect information. How do you go about investigating this issue? So these are some of the big signals that you can see when the information is incorrect. First, you will see high cancellations or product returns. Second, you might also get a lot of customer support tickets after the transaction is complete. Third, you might get very poor reviews. Fourth, you will see customers dropping off, so customers don't return. These are all telltale signs that there might be something wrong which is causing customers to be disappointed and having all these issues. So what are the recommended actions? So let's look at the actions for startups. First, since you are small, you really need to invest time in making sure you're off to a good start. So first, try to manually confirm all the data with sellers before publishing. Maybe get them to review their listing once before it goes live. Second, cross-reference important data points with other public data sets. So for example, if you want to verify the location, if you want to verify the timings of a business, you can check them on Google Maps to see if you find any discrepancies. If there is a local listing of some businesses, you can also contact those to verify whether the information is right. Third, you can also periodically contact your top sellers to ensure that the data is fresh. So this is really important because some sellers will drive bulk of your business, and it's really important for you to be engaged with them and ensure that their information is always fresh and correct. Then you should obsessively monitor all the reviews and tickets that you get. And then you can make a decision whether content accuracy is really a problem or not. And fifth, wherever possible, after the transaction is complete, do send out some feedback surveys to customers as well to see if the information was right or wrong. The recommendations for a big company are slightly different because of the scale at which they operate. So here you would want to use technology as much as possible. So first, try to automatically cross-reference with external and internal data sets. Let's diverge from the restaurant example for a while and look at a healthcare marketplace. Here you may want to look at the medical directory to find out if the doctor is a properly authorized doctor to practice. Second, you should deploy some fraud detection models. So once you figure out some fraud patterns, have some machine learning models in place to detect fraud automatically and at least flag it for a human review. Third, it is very interesting to gamify your content by generating a score. So call it something like a content accuracy or a content freshness score, and always engage your sellers by telling them to keep this score as high as possible. Fourth is you should have some automated workflows. So as soon as some information gets updated, you should verify some checks whether this information looks right or wrong. If there is an information that is very, very critical, you should also potentially ask for additional proof. For example, if halal is a very important aspect for your customers, then you might ask them to upload a photo of their halal certification. This can help you manage these pieces of information better. You should also analyze your tickets and reviews. So you might want to do it in a more automated fashion. And you should also do post-transaction surveys. The last piece of advice I have here is wherever possible, create API sellers. The sellers will likely maintain the most accurate information in their own databases. So if you can get an API integration directly with them, you're likely to have the freshest and the most accurate data. Now let's look at the second pillar, which is coverage. Another scenario. Jake is another customer of Awesome Eats. He is lactose intolerant. So while watching a football match, he felt like ordering some dessert, and he starts looking at the phone. He finds a restaurant, he opens the menu and reads the dessert list, but he can't figure out which desserts are dairy free. Then he tries to look at another restaurant, same problem. Then he gets very disappointed and just decides to not order. Now, why did this happen? This happened because Jake could not find an important piece of information that he was looking for. What is the user impact when coverage is poor? One, user feels confused and frustrated. They need that information but can't find it. The lack of information actually puts a lot of burden on the end user to do the research, and they expect that the marketplace would solve for it. They want to access the marketplace for the simplicity. The third thing, again, in best case scenario, they might contact you, might try to find the missing information. Most likely, they'll just go to an alternate provider who has the right information. What are the root causes of this coverage problem? One is the inadequate understanding of user needs. So if you don't really understand what information your users need, you're unlikely to collect it. As simple as that. Second, the seller is unable to provide all the information. So that may be because the interface that you have created for your sellers does not have that field. There is no way to enter that information. The third thing is sellers are not motivated to provide all the information. So if your sellers are disengaged, they don't care, then it's very hard for them to provide all the information that you need. How would you go about investigating this problem? So the telltale signs of missing information are high cart abandonment and listing page drop-off. So you'll see customers moving deep into the funnel, coming to the product listing page, adding something to the cart, but then not completing the transaction. That is likely because they don't have the confidence. The second case would be pre-transaction support tickets. So for example, if you see a lot of customers contacting live chat, this is typically to ask some missing information or clarify some information. The third thing that you can also keep an eye on in case customers are accessing you through a browser is if they are doing a lot of Control F. So this is very easy to track, and you can see if they are doing Control F. Typically the keywords that they are looking for is the information that they are after. So what are the recommended actions in this situation? So first, it's probably the most obvious. You need to conduct thorough user research to identify all the important pieces of information. So go really deep, talk to a lot of users and see what helps them make a decision. Second, even though you might be strained for resources, it's highly advisable to deploy live chat and display the information prominently so customers can contact you. This might be costly in the short term, but can really accelerate your learning and set you up for the future. If you are unable to answer these questions yourself, don't hesitate and put the seller's contact information upfront. It might feel a bit risky letting buyers and sellers transact directly. However, it's better that the buyers get the information than not get the information at all. Fourth, you need to review all your pre-transaction support tickets. If you are getting a lot of contacts before the customer has made the purchase, that may also signal that some information is missing for which customers are contacting you. Also, once for customers who do transact, also try to use the post-transaction survey where you can ask how easy was it to order? Did you find all the information that you're looking for? These can also unlock some new insights. Finally, it's very important to keep the seller side engaged. So you need to update your seller interface. So if you figure out a new data point that needs to be collected, be quick in updating your seller interface and prompt them to add this information as quickly as possible. What are the recommended actions for a grown-up company? You need to conduct user research as well. This might be more complicated because you might go into new markets, tap into new customer segments, get new sellers on board, and then it's a constant challenge to keep all of these things in sync. So you need to conduct user research to figure out what are the evolving customer needs. If live chat is not a good option for you, you can look at deploying chatbots and see what kind of questions keep coming up. Finally, you can also embed some surveys in the product listing page. So if you feel users are spending a lot of time on the product listing page, then you can essentially prompt a short survey for them to say, how can we help you? Is there something that you find is missing? And these things can also unlock some new insights. Also, like a startup, do analyze your tickets and reviews and conduct post-transaction survey. The seller interface advice applies here as well, but I'm hoping by now that part is more or less solved. The third pillar, consistency. Now let's look at another story. So now this time it's a couple. So Jacob and Maria recently turned vegan and they're loving it. For their anniversary, Jacob decides, let me surprise Maria. And he starts looking for vegan restaurants. He clicks the first restaurant and looks at the menu. None of the dishes look vegan. He then looks at the whole listing page to figure out, okay, is this restaurant really vegan? And he can't see any proof. He goes back and does this with a few restaurants. In the search, he saw all of these restaurants tagged as vegan, but in the actual restaurant listing page, he can't see the vegan information anywhere. This is an example of inconsistent information. In this situation, the information in search results did not match the information on the listing page. So what is the impact? Users will feel stressed if important information is inconsistent. They'll not be able to understand which information is wrong. In best case situations, again, they'll spend some time, but most likely they'll just abandon. What are the typical root causes? Here, it could be a bit technical. So you might have a problem with inconsistent data sources. Now let me qualify this by saying most of these examples will likely affect larger companies compared to smaller companies. Smaller companies work with lesser data and the chances of having inconsistencies there are relatively smaller. But the bigger you get, the more your data explodes and risks of inconsistencies creep in. So the first example is inconsistent data sources. So you have information stored in two separate tables, which is inconsistent and you're reading from both these tables and showing it in different parts. Second is inconsistent business logic. So let's look at the vegan example. So maybe the logic that is used on search result to tag a restaurant as vegan is different from the logic that is used on the listings page. So if you have different business logic, likely the end result that you show to the users will also be inconsistent. Third, your seller interface might be a bit confusing. You might have multiple places to enter individual dish information, the hotel certifications, and any other metadata that the restaurant might want to update about themselves. And if there are multiple places to input similar information, then the chances are inconsistent information gets added at these two ends. I'm going to record this from the beginning, so this needs to be edited. So let's look at what the root causes are. So I'll qualify by saying this problem typically plagues bigger companies compared to smaller companies. The reason being, a startup will typically have a lot less data compared to a large company. So the risks of something being inconsistent is much higher for a larger company. With that, let's look at some of the potential root causes. First is inconsistent data sources. So you may have same or similar information in more than one table, and different parts of your product are reading from these different tables. This can potentially cause inconsistencies. Second thing is inconsistent business logic. So in this example, maybe the vegan tag is auto-generated based on few dish informations, while the listings page does not use this kind of business logic. So if there is different business logic, the same feature might work differently on different parts of the product. Third thing, the seller interface might be problematic. So you may have multiple pages on the seller interface, which is asking for same or similar information. This can confuse sellers and they can give you conflicting information in different pages. Now, based on how you use this data, again, inconsistencies may creep in. And finally, in large companies, typically there is no one team that owns the entire funnel experience end to end. So there might be a search team, there might be a product listing team, and they might add or remove features which can cause inconsistency. So search team might try something new, a new tag for restaurants, while the listing team does not try that, and then there is some inconsistent information. So these are also some things that could happen. How do you go about investigating this? Now, to be honest, inconsistencies are very, very hard to detect because people simply don't have any incentive to report it. If they find inconsistent information and they notice it, they simply drop off. However, you can still try a few things. So one, you can have some feedback mechanisms embedded in your marketplace. You can use the support tickets, live chat, etc., where people might say, this seems wrong. Why am I seeing this here and not there? And this might be a signal that you have a consistency problem. You might also notice some weird user behaviors where there is a lot of back and forth between certain pages, which is some of it will be normal, but in problematic cases, you'll see very high back and forth across pages because users are really trying to make sense of this information. So if you see that, you might want to investigate it a little bit more. So what are the recommended actions? As I said earlier, startups are less likely to face this issue. However, from the beginning, get your data structure rock solid. You should always look to have single source of truth for all information. So wherever possible, try to keep one piece of information in one table and not spread it across multiple tables. Second, also try to keep business logic centralized. For example, the way to identify a restaurant as vegan should be built in an API that can be called from anywhere so that all parts of the product, know what a vegan restaurant is, and can identify it as such consistently. So this is really important. So try an API first approach and put all your business logic inside an API and use that API in all places. The recommended actions for grown-ups are also similar. Create a single source of truth, avoid materializing or duplicating information. However, if you choose to materialize information because there might be genuine use cases to do that, then try to make sure that the business logic is consistent. The API example that I gave before is also relevant here. So whenever you're trying to move information from one table to another, try to use the same business logic by calling the same API and then putting that information in the other table. Finally, you should also ensure that the face doesn't have duplicate or similar fields. So this should be avoided. And finally, every half year or so, do conduct some audits across your products. So there might be inconsistencies in the way the app shows your information versus what is shown on the website. And it's good to do these audits to see where the inconsistencies might be. Now we are at the end. So to quickly summarize, content is a key success driver. Make sure these three pillars are well covered. A great content strategy will help you not only acquire customers, but also retain them. And as content needs evolve over time, it's really important to have as many feedback channels with your buyers as possible so you can keep a track of what content needs are and where the gaps are. And finally, keep your sellers engaged throughout the journey. There is a typo on this slide, so I'm going to re-record this last piece. So we come to the end of the presentation. Just to quickly recap, content is going to be a key success driver for the success of your marketplace. Okay, I'm going to restart again. So with this, we come to the final part of the presentation. So content is going to be a key success driver for your marketplace. Please ensure that the three pillars are well covered. The content is correct, covers all the important user aspects, is consistent. Sorry, restart this. With this, we come to the end of the presentation. And to quickly recap, content is going to be a key success driver for your marketplace. Recap. With that, we come to the end of the presentation. Here's a quick summary. Content is going to be a key success driver of your marketplace. Ensuring that your content is correct and covers all important aspects and is consistent is a basic expectation of your customers. The right content not only helps you get customers, but also guides them through the entire booking process. Third, content needs change over time. So it's really important to have all the feedback channels available so that you can keep a track of what your content needs are. And fourth, sellers are critical to making sure that the content is really useful. So keep your sellers engaged, and this will help improve your chances of success. Thank you for patiently listening. My name is Rahul Chidgopkar. I'm happy to chat with you anytime you want. Here is my LinkedIn link. So please feel free to reach out, and all the best. Thank you.